Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Oddities video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here, once again based on one of your new suggestions. This one having to do with a perfect example of a suggestion leading to something that I would have otherwise never heard about before. Really great stuff when it comes to this suggestion because the information that I was reading here is so fascinating, and I'm definitely glad to share it with everyone here, especially to those of you that, like me, were like minutes ago never aware of this situation. This has to do with a very fascinating case involving a machine that was around for a good number of years, dispensing mystery sodas here and there, and then it was gone. No one seems to know exactly where it was from, who placed it, who operated it, and who took it, but otherwise it still remains a local lore there within the Seattle area. In fact, you're looking at a picture of what the machine was, and more on that here in a minute as to the key word into the past tense, but it has to do with this. It's known as the Mystery Soda Machine. Isn't that a fascinating title? When I first heard that one, I thought it was almost like a joke as far as the suggestion, but no, it turns out this was an absolutely real deal thing. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info associated with this mystery soda machine. So what was it exactly? Well, it all started at an area there in Seattle, Washington, specifically at a place called Capitol Hill. So those of you that happen to be there in that area, you might know exactly where I'm talking about. It was apparently on the corner of a place called John Street and 10th Avenue East. In fact, if you wanted to get even more specific, it was in front of a business. More on that here in a minute, that may be actually tied to its origins. But that's where people would find this machine, this nonchalant, standard, normal, old soda machine there for a good time. In fact, the way the story goes, it was there not just for several years, but for several decades as well. In fact, people were reported seeing it for the very first time back in the 1980s. And the fact that it ended up staying there all the way until 2018 showcases how long this thing was. There may have been a chance, too, that it was it may come back afterward, but at least for now, that was its time period that it was there within that Capitol Hill location. But yes, at first it was just a regular soda machine. People had no issues with it, nothing else that stood out in a weird, strange, but beautiful way. It was just a regular soda machine like the old ones you see anywhere else that would just dispense soda. And at the time, it was listing a price of 75 cents. But where things took a bizarre turn was this. I don't know exactly if this was like at the beginning, very, very beginning that it was doing this, or if it morphed into this somewhere along the way. Methinks it was more along the lines of that category, where it didn't start out in other words, as a mystery soda machine, but instead was a regular one. But somewhere along the way, that's where all of a sudden those 6 buttons change from showcasing, let's say, specific drinks, like I'm just going to make things up like Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper or Sprite and so on. All of a sudden it changed from having that to literally having the word mystery with a question mark in front of it. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that would make Edward Nygma, the Riddler there from Batman, all giddy with excitement. So yes, those 6 buttons were replaced with these labels that simply said mystery. The pricing, though, stayed the same, but now you had 6 random buttons to pick from anytime you put in your the price of 75 cents. Afterward, it was increased to $1, but in the beginning, it was at least 75 cents. And where things got even more bizarre was this. Since you had no idea of what you were actually pushing in terms of what you were getting in terms of the product, anything that came out was completely random, and it turned out to be these amazing assortments of soda cans. In fact, these were soda cans that were being dispensed that were long gone. The idea I'm getting is that going into maybe the 2000s and the 2010s, that's when people must have realized that the soda cans these were dispensing were coming from even beyond or earlier that time period, since the 1980s, in fact. In fact, people reported that they would get cans of sodas like lemon lime slice and then also Pepsi AM. I had no idea what these sodas are. Some of you might know about them. And then there were other really bizarre drinks like Diet Hubba Bubba Bubblegum soda, and then also bacon infused Coca-Cola, stuff that you could have just imagined may have been here for a short time period, or more likely was offered internationally. If you've ever seen some of those international sections, like let's say at a grocery store, you might see some different items, like in other words different types of sodas, in other words, that you would never ever see here. Like other things that were people apparently found was Mountain Dew Whiteout, and then they also found old soda cans of Hawaiian Punch. People even stated that they found really nostalgic ones involving New Coke. Remember that? From a time period before, at least my time, where people were used to hate that New Coke, but now it's a collectible, and people were finding that as well. And so word got around that this machine, however, whoever was operating it, had changed it to these mystery buttons, and it was dispensing these really rare soda cans that in turns, they would turn out to be actually quite valuable when it comes to some of these cans. And so it began having its own local lore. People would come out, they would push in the coins, and in some cases they would put in the bills as well, and then they would just spend money. There were reports of people buying up dozens of cans, always trying to see if they could collect as much as they could, or trying to see if they could find a pattern associated with this machine. Maybe they could figure out its origin based on any patterns that they could discern from it. But no, there was absolutely nothing that could be done in terms of figuring out who was doing it, why they were doing it, what type of soda cans people would expect or anticipate. It was just 100% completely random. Now, if you're wondering if the machine itself ever had any issues, there were. Apparently, just like with anything, whenever people want to ruin a good thing, there's always these idiots out there that decide to vandalize the actual machine. I mean, you've seen some of the pictures that people would vandalize it just as is. They would just do so just to be idiots. And then others would vandalize it because apparently the machine, once it was getting up in its age, would not properly dispense things. So you would put in the coins, you would put in the bills, and then it would stop working. And interestingly enough, though, when that happened, whoever was operating this mystery soda machine would realize on a day-to-day basis almost when the machine was down, because as soon as the machine was having issues in terms of having soda cans dispersed, by usually the next day everything would be working fine. That gives you an idea that whoever did this was obviously monitoring this location and this machine on a very close basis. More on that here in just a minute. And so whenever they saw that there was an issue with it, they would get it fixed. Clearly they wanted this thing to continue working. Otherwise, they would have just left it 100% malfunctioning, and there would be nothing else you would do. You could just imagine this with any other old soda machine that's out there. You've seen those sometimes when you're going across country into some areas that haven't looked, like in other words, that haven't been maintained in a long time. You'll always find an old soda machine that probably stopped working, and it would cost much more money to fix it than to actually care for it. And so that when that happens, that's where the soda machine is just left dilapidated. But no, whoever was doing this clearly wanted to make sure that things were working right, and then that's when that machine was fixed. There were even reports of people busting open the actual soda machine. Of course, idiots being that they are, they would bust it open and they would take away all the cans, but still, whoever was operating it would make sure that everything was okay, and within a day or two, it was back up and running, not in 100% condition because of the years and the age that it had, but at least it was still operating. Now you must be wondering, well, who essentially was operating it, right? If people knew about this and it had its own local legend, clearly people would be able to find out who this person was, or people. As it turns out, though, it's still, to this very day, until the day that it disappeared, there was nothing in terms of anyone having concrete evidence. The closest was this, and even then you take this with a grain of salt. There was a person who stated that they saw a couple, a man and a woman, in a white van late one night right there at the machine, and they were servicing the machine. Like, in other words, they were placing soda cans into it, but he tried to get a picture, but it clearly didn't show too much. Like, there was nothing else in terms of proof that of who they were, or maybe that person was far away, anything like that. But no, that's one angle. And then another angle was, well, if you have a soda machine, then won't you have anything in terms of a permit or some other type of licensing that you need in order to have a soda machine just randomly at one place? You can't just buy a soda machine and put it in the middle of a city. You need to have some type of permit for it. And so that was looked into, and it was turning out that no, there was no single record of the machine being, I guess, approved for it. But there it was, still an operation, clearly for a good number of years. So that angle was tried, and then nothing was done. And then finally, there was this. I was mentioning this earlier as well. The location of this thing was in front of a business. This business was a locksmith. It was known as the Broadway Locksmith. I don't know if that business is still there now or not. Someone will have to key me in here, or key us in the comments. But yes, this Broadway Locksmith had it right in front of their building. You would think that if somebody had mysteriously placed a machine in front of someone else's building, that the owner of that building would have thought to themselves, get that thing out, right? Or would have thought to themselves, okay, you can place it there, but we got to have a partnership when it comes to the revenue. But whoever this was operating that machine either was Broadway Locksmith, obviously the same, in other words, and they didn't have anything else needing to be done because it was them, or they worked out something with the owners of Broadway Locksmith, and then that way could keep that machine in front of the business. I definitely think it's more of the former. You can't just really have, again, something there that long, and we're talking about decades, in front of a building of a business without the business obviously being in on it. So I think that was the case, and what led me to further believe it was this. Remember I mentioned earlier there was an incident where the machine was busted open and it was almost like trying to be moved. Well, when it was fixed, there was a set of locks, or something else, in other words, that would keep the machine right there to the spot, held to the ground, held to the whatever type of thing was tied in, like a lock towards its back to the wall. And it made me wonder, locksmith, locksmith, locks, right? It would make too much sense to have anything else not be a strange coincidence when it comes to that. So yeah, I still think that that's the case there. If it was them or if it isn't, whoever the people were, especially from Broadway Locksmith, they have kept their mouth shut. They just simply have said nothing in terms of them being them or not being them when it comes to the owners, and then also the ones that run that mystery soda machine. But fascinating stuff. No, when it comes to that, makes you wonder like why they would continue with that for so long. Maybe it was good business. Maybe they got a lot of revenue from it, but it allowed people to know about their area and then come and then stop at that machine, and then, oh look, there's a locksmith, maybe I can buy some stuff afterward, that kind of stuff. So who knows, but they've kept their mouth shut when it comes to that. Lastly, if you're wondering what happened to the machine, well, one day, this was in 2018, it turns out it was gone. One day it was gone. In fact, there was a note that was placed on there, and it was taped to the ground or taped in an area that the machine was, and it said, went for a walk. And then the page for the machine on the Facebook site, because yes, it even had its own page, stated that it was going for a walk, needed to find myself, maybe take a shower even, and then that was it. So whoever operated this machine finally decided one day they were going to remove it, maybe bring it back. But as of that time period, June 2018, there hasn't been anything left. Nothing else in terms of other proof of where the machine went or when it's coming back. And almost, 4 years later, 3.5 years later, there still hasn't been anything yet. So maybe, who knows, it might come back, maybe not. But at least that was the last instance of this mystery soda machine. So what do you guys think? Anyone there from the Seattle area, maybe the Capitol Hill area? Maybe you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you were there, that was so awesome. If you got a chance to visit the machine, maybe even get one of those lucky old weird soda cans from it. I definitely if I was in the area, would have tried that. I mean, the articles I was reading stated that because it had become its own local legend, there was like a line of people that's usually there to try to get the stuff from the machine and take pictures, take selfies, and so on. So I definitely would have been able to go there, and I would have easily chronicled it for my channel. But if anyone has a more local experience, I'd definitely love to hear it here. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.